Hey, what's up guys? This is Mast, and I thought with a little reveal of the upcoming Season 5 map that we do a little video real quick and kind of go over the big Tumblr post that Hi-Rez put out and look at some of the ideas that they have for the changes upcoming in Season 5. There will actually be a little Season 5 map preview down here at the bottom, but we'll start off looking at their points, kind of reading through and going over what they're looking at in Season 5, which is looking promising, but I can't tell from the map if those changes are really going to occur, so let's just kind of go through this. So our goals for Season 5 Conquest map are to improve gameplay and pacing through map symmetry and mitigating snowballing. This is the big point here so far in this update, is snowballing, and that's huge. Snowballing is SMITE's biggest problem. I'm really looking forward to see what they do. They didn't get into too much specifics, which I'm sure we'll see in the future, and I'm sure we'll see in Season 5, of course, as to what they've done. But snowballing, SMITE's biggest issue. I would love to see them tackle this. It looks like they're trying to. The Season 5 map will feature perfect vertical symmetry between Order and Chaos. Lanes and jungle paths will have the same exact shape on top and bottom. This balances the map and removes timing differences to each side. That's a good point to make. That's a good change to SMITE. Overall, this creates a more consistent gameplay experience. Snowballing is an issue we want to tackle in Season 5. Snowballing becomes a problem when players are completely unable to make a comeback. And while we don't have situations where players are often completely unable, in realistic competitive SMITE, it's very often that once you get 5k ahead or more, it's practically impossible, and that leads to so many one-sided ranked games and even one-sided SPL games. Currently, if I'm playing Scylla in the mid lane and the enemy mage and jungler kill me at level 1, I'm going to have little to no impact on the early game. In Season 5, I have more of a chance to come back from that. That's a really big thing for them to tackle. Hopefully they can do it at least decently. That will be a great change to SMITE, because yeah, dying in the early game is huge. Falling behind 2 levels in the early game makes it practically impossible to fight. You basically shouldn't be able to. They have to screw up. It's not on you making an outplay. So, update. The Season 5 map is 20% wider. That's great. The goal is that this encourages players to make more strategic decisions about their positioning. When you rotate as a team, it is a big deal. There's more risk and reward to this decision. This is great. This is great for SMITE. It's great for junglers. It's great for laners. And it should be great for the support role as well, where you're not just sitting in mid. Next thing you know, okay, we cleared the wave. We're going to go rotate to duo lane. We're going to go rotate to solo lane. We're just going to go make a quick rotation. Maybe it looks like that rotation won't pan out. Okay, we'll just go back to mid. We'll get the wave anyways. That type of stuff shouldn't really happen as much as it does in SMITE. That's what they're tackling, is making those rotations more punishing. You can't just go run into the jungle and then run back and not miss anything. So that'll be great to see, and the 20% wider should help a lot with that. Update, jungle camps respawn faster but are worth less XP and gold. This is an interesting one, and this isn't the way I expected them to take it. Personally, I'm not as much of a fan of them respawning faster. I'd rather see more jungle camps and an even larger jungle, in my opinion. But I do like the idea of them respawning faster, because the great thing about jungle camps respawning faster is that it's easier for the jungler to get farm. And their point here in the goal is junglers have more decisions to make. Skilled junglers can maximize their impact, while early mistakes will not end the game. And I think that's a great point. Getting invaded won't be as high impact. Where just rotating and farming very efficiently will have a pretty high impact. And that also, with those faster respawns, gives you much more chance to choose your jungle route and not have it decided for you based on when buffs went down before. Because if you have 4-minute respawn timers on different buffs, then you know, it's kind of 4 minutes that you don't want to go to that part of the map. So when they're respawning faster, that should be less of an issue. Junglers should have a lot more freedom in where they go. Update, the values for XP sharing or splitting have been decreased. Goal, currently if you're not grouping up and sharing XP, you are playing wrong. In Season 5, players can tactically choose when to group up or when to make a solo play. This is it for me, man. This is the one that really is just high in my mind. SMITE is finally doing it. They finally seem to get it. This has been meta since Season 1. They're finally trying to have a big impact on it, because it's been the same. So basically, this doesn't play into the AD carry role too much, although it kind of does, but it doesn't really touch the AD carry lane too much. It really touches on mid and in solo lane, where basically mid and support and then jungle and solo are often tag teaming farm. They'll tag team a wave, then they'll go tag team 1 or 2 buffs, and then they'll go back to wave, then they'll go back to buffs, and they're not rotating or playing that aggressively because it's just so efficient to farm that way. And when you don't get those camps or you miss a wave, you fall behind a lot. So I really like that change, partially because splitting farm doesn't make sense nearly as much when you're not in comms, when you're not playing competitively. So it's a weird meta for SMITE, because it makes communication kind of too important when it comes to knowing your teammates. Because if you're not farming efficiently together, you just have a disadvantage. And that really sucks when it's like, when you have that one middle laner that just doesn't know how to split a thing, or that one jungler that never wants to split and goes off on their own. And so both of you fall behind because of that. That really sucks in SMITE. And so that'll be a great way to kind of make your teammates less impactful on your own play, because your teammates can really easily deny you farm right now. when they do that. Update, jungle and lane minions are worth more over time. We believe that the early game is too important. We wanted to slow that down without slowing down the game overall by ramping up the stakes over time. This feature allows us to fine-tune the pace of conquest going forward. So I can't really tell what they mean with this one. I can't really tell too much. But based on the goal, it looks promising. Really, the idea here is really the key is here, right? We believe that the early game is too important. That's very true for SMITE, and that's been very true for a long time. You can see it very clearly in the jungle and solo lane. Basically, right now in the current meta, you're normally seeing jungle and solo tag teaming waves together. There's this really key point where if you have that little bit extra clear, that clear advantage in the solo lane at level 1, you both clear waves, you rotate in the jungle, you clear fire elementals, and you come back at level 2, they're not at level 2 yet. They're either on their buffs or they're trying to get that wave. If they're on wave, you're level 2, you can fight them and kill them, or get even more pressure because you're level 2 and you have an extra ability over them, or they're back at their buffs. You clear another wave, outclear them again, they get pushed a tower, they lose gold. Meanwhile, while they're losing gold and maybe losing farm, you go back to your buffs, you get a buff, you're still back to the wave in time, you keep pressuring them into their own tower just from that level 1 clear advantage, which is crazy. So there's a lot of stuff like that right now where what you do at level 1 impacts what you do at levels 1 through 5. And so slowing down the early game should help a lot with that. I don't want SMITE to become League. I don't think there's any way SMITE becomes League. I do think slowing down the early game more to that League of Legends style pace will help a bit. Where it's not, I'm sure it's not going to be quite there, but it's slowing down a bit and it's getting a little slower for the early part. That should be good. So when all of these changes come together in Season 5, there will be a much larger focus on the individual impact of each player. The changes to map size, camp pacing, XP splitting create more scenarios where players need to split up. That's really important. You need to have your individual roles. It's great that we're moving towards that. Grouping up early will no longer be the only option. Players will need to make more decisions about their position on the map. The changes will make the early game less punishing while also allowing skilled players more opportunities to gain incremental advantages as the game progresses. In the moment we've all been waiting for, the Season 5 map. Take a look and tell us what you think. We're looking forward to having a constructive discussion and hearing your feedback to evolve Season 5 together. And here's the map. Can we zoom in? I guess we can't zoom in. This is the map right here. So basically, I'm sure I can just zoom it in on my own. I'm not sure about the map overall, and we'll kind of talk about that real quick. It's more of an opinion thing. I see where they're going. Like they said, we've got shorter respawn timers. I would love to see more farm here in this jungle. Here is this wider map, right? Here's this wider map, and yet again in SMITE, Gold Fury and Fire Giant take up this massive portion of it. This massive portion of the map are basically dedicated to teamfight objectives. And I get that you want those objectives there, right? I get that you want them, but the problem is that's just this huge gap in farm for the jungler. And personally, I would really love to see a little more diversity in basically jungle routes. And when you're not really farming these parts of the map as the jungler, it just makes it more consistent where you're ganking from. It's a little less interesting. So I'd love to see some actual farm in here. Now, obviously, that's a little clunky because we do have Gold Fury and we do have Fire Giant. And I can't tell if Fire Elementals are still around. It looks like they're taking out Fire Elementals. But I would love to see some changes there and maybe go ahead and mix up the actual boss objectives of Bull Demon, Gold Fury, and Fire Giant. But the big thing to note, if you guys haven't already, you probably have, speed buff is basically down at a small camp point. This is a weird change. I think it's probably for the better. I understand that the idea is basically this is going to make speed buff invades much more difficult and much more punishing. So speed buff is very reliable for the jungler to get. And while I think that's mostly a good thing, I'm not sure that it's too necessary. In my opinion, the biggest issues with the SMITE map aren't so much of the speed buff invades, but instead how easy it is for both lanes to have access to purple buff and to blue buff. And more importantly for purple buff, blue buff is the solo lane buff, right? Blue buff is basically meant for the solo laner. They can go get that mana sustain to stay in lane and compete with each other, which is good. So maybe it's fine for blue buff to stay where it is. But one of the issues right now that we're having with this AD carry meta we're facing in late Season 4 is that purple buff is incredibly accessible to the ADC. And it looks like the way Gold Fury, I can't tell if this is true or not. It looks like Oracles might be positioned a little farther from the ADC now, a little more towards mid, on this map at least. But basically, if you have purple buff spawn as an AD carry, you clear wave, you go run to purple buff, it's a really easy kill. and that's just kind of too much farm for a lane that's off already on its own, like all the time. Whereas mid often is getting sapped, Soul Lane is at least somewhat getting sapped. Now maybe in this upcoming season with the changes, Soul Lane won't so much, but mid is probably still going to get sapped a decent amount. So when you're getting these late game mages who are not getting as much farm as the AD carry role, because AD carry role not only gets solo farm, but they also get buffs, whereas mid has to get sapped, farm, and wave, and then also get buffs to begin with. Like, they're basically just getting their wave sapped and not getting any extra buffs off of it for the most part, at least. So I'm a little bit afraid of the purple buff being a little too strong for the ADC, and that the purple buff should really be more positioned somewhere over here, closer to the small camp, so the ADC can't be getting that so much for free, and that at least if they are going to go farm it, then they're probably getting pushed to tower for it. And that's a little bit more of a point where they can be losing creeps to tower and the other ADC can get a push advantage. But right now it's so easy to clear wave, go grab purple, and go back to wave, and just meet the wave as it collides. So I think purple buff is honestly a big problem in SMITE, especially since the buff itself isn't so strong. It's really more of a point of farm than anything. And it's a support buff, so it doesn't need to be next to this lane, since this really is more of the AD carry lane than the actual duo lane in SMITE. Red buff, I think it's fine where it is. I don't think we need to worry about red buff. I do like the speed buff change for the most part, that it's not so easy to invade. And I like the positioning of buffs like this, where they're intended for the jungler. I like that. I'm just not sure that speed buff needs to be hidden away from invades. I do like that it's really prioritized more for the jungler, and this is a buff that the jungler should basically solo farm. This is fine. I think having small camps replace speed buff is totally fine. That's how it was in beta before season 1. Blue buff, I'm a little bit weird about that. Whoops. A little bit weird about that. I kind of think blue buff should be somewhat over here instead. Maybe a path should be going this way, so it's a little farther from that solo lane tower. But that's probably fine. I think it's okay for solo lane to actually go ahead and get their blue buff on their own for the most part. I just wish it was a little more jungler friendly, in my opinion. And then I really wish there was a little more in this section of the map. More jungle camps, in my opinion, are just almost always better. So squeezing in a little bit more farm for the jungler would be great. One of the things I'm looking forward to in Season 5, I can't tell at all if they're going to do this. I think it's one of the major problems SMITE has right now, is that I think mid camp should be worth more. In Season 1, mid camps were worth way too much, but what it did is it led to a lot of fighting in the early and the mid game, just because mid camps are a neutral buff. They are evenly positioned for both teams. So when you're competing over mid camps and they're actually worth a lot of farm, you get a lot of rotations towards those mid camps. That was really interesting in Season 1. They nerfed that in either late Season 1 or in Season 2, I don't remember, and made them not quite as valuable, but still very valuable. And so with that, you had a little less competition, and it wasn't quite as game-breaking, but there was still a lot of competition over those buffs because they're very valuable and they had short respawn timers. So I would love to see a transition back towards that and also include oracles in that same process. But right now, mid camps aren't worth that much. Yes, you pick them up, but they're not very valuable. They don't compete with the farm that you get from these other buffs, like these buffs right here. So I would love to see mid camps worth a little bit more, and that'd be a great way to increase competition in the early and mid game over jungle buffs, especially when we're trying to take away invades on stuff like speed that's very critical to jungler. Increasing actual competition over neutral buffs would be great for more competition in the early game and less of a farm meta, more of an actual fighting meta. But that should pretty much do it for this one, guys. I think that's really all we've got to go over. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. I think I do want to start moving towards more edited videos where we're going over issues like these. I think with this issue, because they had a whole Tumblr post, it was worth just going ahead and reading through it for the most part, doing it more like a patch notes type thing and going over my thoughts with it. But thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I will see you all in the next one.